Congress is back from summer recess today, and it has a lot on its plate, but only a few weeks to work out some major issues, including how to fund the federal government in the new fiscal year and whether it will approve the Iran nuclear deal that Republicans oppose. Andrew Friedman is principal at the Washington Update, and he joins us now to discuss these items and other important deadlines on Congress's agenda. Andy, great to have you back with us.
Thanks, Tom.
Let's start with the end of the fiscal year on September 30th, the beginning of the new one. Where do we stand on that, and could that possibly lead us to another stalemate that eventuates in the government shutting down, if only for a few days?
I think that's a risk, Tyler. As you point out, Congress has to fund the government, appropriate money to run the government by September 30th. If they don't, on October 1st, the government shuts down. You'll remember that happened a couple of years ago. And there's some fights brewing. It's no secret here. The Republicans are talking about defunding Planned Parenthood. There's also talk about whether we should spend more or less on social programs than we have in the past. Republicans and Democrats differ on that. And those are the kind of arguments that could bear some sort of concern along the way. So I think, we have to be vigilant about that.
Yeah, and the markets are watching it extremely closely, yes. Andrew. So if you were a betting man, put a percentage on it in terms of whether or not we'll reach a deal or not.
Well, I mean, I refer to this as a narrow, deep hole. I think the risk of it happening is less than 50%. But if it happens, then we have a real problem because the government shuts down. And if I can just elaborate on that a little bit, this happened a couple years ago, you'll remember, over funding the Affordable Care Act. Right after the government shut down, the U.S. government ran out of money and had to borrow more money, and that means Congress had to raise the debt ceiling, or we would have defaulted on the debt, which nobody wants. And of course, in order to avoid that, they reopened the government in the process. This year, the estimates are we won't run out of money until November or December. So if it does shut down, what reopens it?
What about that debt ceiling? They'll have to reauthorize it, expand the debt ceiling at that point, and that has been a trigger point in the past.
That's absolutely right. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line. Will the Republicans get to the point that we're risking defaulting on our debt? Now, again, I don't want to scare any listeners. We're not going to default on the debt. Nobody's going to let that happen. But that's the ultimate deadline. And what happens in the meantime? How much carnage along the way do we have to worry about?
Very quickly, the Iran nuclear agreement, is that going to be it's a contentious point, certainly, on Capitol Hill for members of both parties. But how do you think that is going to proceed?
Well, I think the greatest concern about the Iran agreement is not so much the agreement itself and the voting on it, because I think Congress is not going to have the votes to knock it down. The concern is it's taking valuable time away from dealing with this issue of funding the government. Between that and the Jewish holidays and other issues, Congress isn't around that much.
All right, Andrew, thank you so much. Andrew Friedman with the Washington Update.